Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and in today's episode I'm going to do something slightly different than usual. Normally, if I do an RPG recommendation, it's because it's a system that I've read thoroughly, or at least try to, and is something that I've played a game in, or at least read enough that I'm confident that I know how it plays, and I'm recommending it to other people. In this case, I haven't actually read the product. I've read the quick start guide to the product, which I have here that I'm going to talk to you about, but I have not actually read or played this game yet. I may do so in the future as part of one of my solo game series, but there's a lot of other things that I want to get done. So, that game is Fabula Ultima. Fabula Ultima is a Japanese anime or JRPG themed game that is written by a gentleman from Italy, and the gentleman's name is Emanuele Galletto. Excuse me. Has also had a lot of influence on the art that's been used. This is being made by Need Games and is actually already out as far as I can tell. But it's out in Italian. If you want an English version of it, the English version hasn't been released yet. It's supposed to be released at some point in 2022. But for right now, if those of us who don't speak Italian, the only thing that we can do is look at the English quick start rules that are available for free on their website, which I will do from here. I have actually already printed them out, and I've read them thoroughly, and the reason why I'm going to use my printed version of it as opposed to the official copy that I have is because it's larger, and I like things that are larger print. What sets this system apart? This system, I have played other games that purported to be anime themed or Japanese inspired, and while they are interesting and while they have some interesting mechanics in them, a lot of times I tend to read them, say, huh, that's fun, put them on the shelf, and then they stay there. And it's entirely possible that the same thing will happen with this one. But when I first read it, I actually felt that tingling desire of, huh, that's interesting. I could play this. And that one little tick in my brain was enough to tell me that this might actually be worth looking into when it comes out. I'm actually looking forward to the English release of the official book. I will be pre-ordering it when I can, and or purchasing a copy when it becomes available. What sets this system apart, however, is not the art style. The art style is pretty cool. There's a lot of fun stuff with the art. I really actually enjoy the cover design here because it has that hero kind of looking out over the edge of the ship, out towards the kingdom and the wonders. Because it's a kingdom, I think that it helps to emphasize that it's not the lone wanderer against the wilderness, but it's adventure. It's, we could have castles and there's, this looks like a flying island, so that's kind of cool. There's wilderness. Yes, there's also a hint of some ruins in there. It's all very abstract and fun, light. I kind of like that. I'm going to show the art using the color version because my black and white printer is not up to showing you cool art. The characters are drawn in definitely what I would consider to be an anime style. But that is actually to the good because it really sets a tone. This game is creating a tone from start to finish, and that tone is based on the JRPGs that many of us have played while we were growing up on, like the Super Nintendo. I really kind of like the aesthetic that they have gone with for this system. I think that it's a consistent one. The art direction so far has been very consistent as how the characters and the environments in the book look. I think that it's just the right touch of whimsical plus practical to establish a sort of verisimilitude without going full on, is this realistic? Because there's some non-realistic things in here, which there should be if it's based on a JRPG, right? Okay. Mechanically, one of the things that the Quick Start Guide does, or the Press Start Guide, is it introduces you to the system step by step as you're playing the adventure. So the adventure is the Quick Start Guide, and you pick one of 4 characters. Each player picks one of 4 characters at the beginning, and then as you progress through the events in the Press Start Guide, you then unlock more sections of your character sheet. So the first thing you unlock is just your ability scores. Excuse me. And then from there, the next scene you unlock, I think, is traits and bonds. And then the next scene from there, you unlock other, and it continues on. And as each scene progresses, more and more aspects of the character are unlocked, and you're expected to use those new tools in order to solve the problem in combination with the tools that you've learned in the past. I think that's a great way to do a quick start guide. I wish more games would do this for their quick start guides, as opposed to just like throwing you into it and saying, here's your character sheet and this is what stuff means and go for it. This kind of, it walks you through the process. I think it was done very elegantly. The adventure that this sends you through is not the most, it's not original in the sense that I was left going, oh, wow, how could they ever have come up with that? No, but it was neat because you start off an airship, and the first thing that happens is the airship starts to crash. And so you're using your ability scores to try to perform actions to not prevent the crash, because the crash is assumed to just happen. You're trying to prevent the crash from being too damaging. You're trying to limit the damage to the ship. And I think that's kind of cool. It's a little bit railroady in a sense, but for this product, it kind of has to be. How do the rules work? Well, you start out with 4 ability scores. And those are dexterity, insight, might, and willpower. And each one is assigned a die type, because this game uses the dice from the D6 to the D12. So, we'll take Blair Clarimond, which is the kind of the main character of this little story here. One of the 4 main characters, really. Blair has a dexterity of a D6, a insight of a D10, a might of a D8, and a willpower of a D8. Those are pretty decent scores to begin with. How an action is performed is, let's say you describe, I want to, grab the rope of the sail that is kind of swinging around to kind of try to tie that down and prevent the sail and the boom arm on this ship from knocking people off the deck. And so that's your action during this crash, because a rope broke and things are flying around. So you're trying to take control of the sails a little bit to prevent them from hurting people. So the DM might say, well, that sounds to me like that's going to be a dexterity and a might roll. In which case you take the D6 from your dexterity and the D8 from your might. Excuse me. And you roll them. And if you roll a 10 or higher in total with those 2 dice, then that action succeeds. If it's that's because that's a normal action at this point, and the game recommends that all actions at this point be considered normal. If it is a very difficult action, then you have to roll a 13 or higher. If it's a much easier action, then you have to roll a 7 or higher. So that's 7. 3 higher than 7 is 10, 3 higher than 10 is 13. So it kind of is going off of a 3 basis, up and down by 3. I think that's it's a neat number to see how that's working, and the way that they put the dice together makes sense to me. So all your actions are going to be a combination of 2 of your abilities in some way, shape, or form. How they combine together is kind of up to the situation and the DM. The other thing that can happen is you can have what do they call them? Effects, status effects on your character. Now, we all remember playing those games and having status effects put on our characters, and we had to use potions and things in order to get rid of them in the middle of combat. Well, you've got the same thing going on here. The standard ones are slow or dazed or enraged. Then you have weak or shaken or poisoned. Now, what that does is each of those is keyed to one of your ability scores. In this case, a slowed is keyed to your dexterity. So if your character is hit by something that makes them slowed, then you check that box on your character sheet, and then the die type for your dexterity goes down 1. Excuse me. So if it was a D10 dexterity, then it would become a D8. If it was a D8 dexterity, it becomes a D6. Things can't get lower than a D6, so that's it. And if you get, say, enraged, or sorry, if you're poisoned. Poisoned affects both might and willpower, which means that both of those die abilities are reduced by 1 die type. And the way that this is put together suggests to me that these things are expected to be used relatively frequently as effects. Maybe not every combat necessarily, but they're something that is going to be present because they put that right on top with the ability scores. And I kind of like that. The next thing that separates this apart from other games is they put a lot of emphasis on traits and bonds with this system. Now, traits are things about your character that kind of define who they are. An example trait, like the one that we have for Blair here, is their identity, which is they are an heir to the throne of Dunova. Then they have a theme. Their character's theme is duty. And then they have an origin, which is the Kingdom Dunova. And then, under duty, they have something written here, which is, there is something that I must do. So these traits help to define who your character is. They're kind of a quick and easy way of saying, I am playing X. Doesn't matter what class you picked. There's a lot of different classes available in the final book from what I've read. There's going to be several. But in this case, it's less important about what class you picked. That doesn't define who you are. What defines who you are is your character's identity, their theme, which is the kind of story that you want to tell, or the kind of things that you want your character to be involved in, and then their origin. Now, these can also be used to help you power your character's abilities in a sense. If you spend some power points, excuse me, you can activate some of your traits in order to increase a die type, or the type of one of your dice for a roll, to get a better chance of success. I think that's one of the things you can do, or to get yourself a bonus on that roll after you made the roll. Now, that's important because it ties these things together. It makes that background part of your character really important, and some things are going to be used, because in order to make that happen, these have to make sense in that scene. You can't just say, well, I'm from Dunova, and so therefore I know everything about airships, and so they're like, unless it's been established that Dunova is a manufacturer of airships, and your character is familiar with that industry, that wouldn't really connect. What might connect is like I'm from Denova and I would know, where this ship was built. That might connect. I don't know. It'd be weird. It's an idea. I like it. I think it's neat. The other thing is there's a lot of space on this character sheet devoted to your character's bonds. These are bonds that you have with your fellow party members. And that is really cool. Now you can have, right now, they in the quick start or the press start guide, they really only list 3 bonds because they only expect you to have bonds with, there's only 4 members of the party, and so you have bonds with 3 of them. In the full game, you're supposed to be able to have up to 6 bonds. Now, these bonds are associated with emotions. When you first select a bond with another member of your party, you can pick one emotion. And for each emotion, you kind of pick from there's each one is like a pair. So there's a pair of emotions or a pair of reactions that are connected with that person. You pick one or the other. So for example, there could be admiration or inferiority. And that's how you feel about that person. Either you admire them or you feel inferior to them. Or there's loyalty or mistrust. That there's one of the other members of this party, someone who you're incredibly loyal to, or maybe someone you just don't trust. And then finally, there's affection or hatred. And how you can combine these things together is you can have up to 3 emotions linked to a bond, and that would give you a +3 bonus when evoking that bond as part of a role when you're trying to help and support each other in the party. You can combine that. Let's say you have admiration, loyalty, and affection for one of your fellow party members. All 3 right there. Okay. And that's one good way to kind of combine them all. Or you could have one of the other party members that you feel inferior to them, you feel you mistrust them, and you kind of hate them. When those 3 things together, if it's that extreme, you got to wonder, why are you in a party with them? But maybe there's other reasons that keep you together. And that's part of how the story develops. Or it could be maybe you hate somebody, but you're loyal to them for a different reason. And it could relate to your character's theme of duty. So you have duty towards this person that you don't really like, but you're also loyal to that duty that you owe that person. And so that's a way you can kind of evoke that bond. And there's a lot of space on this character sheet that's devoted to this idea. I really kind of like it. I think that it's a really important thing to use to keep characters together. There's a lot more involved with this. There's Fabula points, which are the things that are used in order to power special abilities, and you kind of earn those by being awesome. Then there's inventory points. Inventory is interesting because you don't really track items, you track inventory points, and then you spend those points in order to kind of pull an item out of your pack. So in a sense, you're basically pulling out what you need right at that moment instead of stocking up ahead of time. And you can, when you go to a shop, instead of buying specific items, you're more or less buying inventory points. That's kind of how this seems to run. I'm not as big of a fan of that particular aspect. I personally really like having my character's inventory and knowing what's there because I think that makes more sense, but I like to plan. I like it when people get caught off kilter because they didn't plan. I think that's kind of fun too. It helps people to be more creative and come up with more creative solutions. But at the same time, I think that there's some uses to this because it speeds up gameplay a lot to have this point system. And how it works is, let's say you want to buy a remedy that costs 3 inventory points. Sorry, that costs 5. No, it is 3. 3 inventory points. And drinking it allows one creature to recover 50 hit points. Oh, sorry, 50 hit points. Or there's an elixir. Again, 3 inventory points, drink it, you recover 50 magic points, or mana points. Mana powers your special abilities, whether they are melee combat attacks, ranged combat attacks, or magic. And then finally, there's a tonic that costs 2 inventory points and allows one creature to recover from 1 status effect. So instead of having like one kind of tonic for each of the different status effects, you have a general tonic that you can drink, and that will cure one of them. I would be tempted to house rule like, something specific for each one, but that's me. I kind of like the crazy inventory stuff. Like I said before, this is a very fast and easy system to run games quickly. So for that purpose, it's nice. Hit points and mind points, or mana points, I would call them. But anyway, you're going to see these a lot. There's going to be a lot of these. So the starting character has 45 hit points and 60 mind points. So that's a lot. But attacks do a lot of damage in this game, so you're going to kind of go through those pretty quickly. And then it talks about initiative and defenses. There's a lot more here. I'm not going to go into each individual deal. All right. But suffice to say that this is a neat system. It's got some neat ideas behind it. I really like their focus on bonds and traits over class abilities. I think that is impressive in and of itself. I think the art is fun. And I'm looking forward to when Need Games releases this full game. So the press start guide is available as a free download on their website. It looks exactly like what came in this book, so you don't need to search this book out. Just download the free PDF. There's also a continuation available on the website. If you finish what's on the press start guide and you want to keep on playing, you download the continue play. Let's see if I can find the cover of it to show you. Here we go. It's called Load Game. So you can get the Load Game PDF, and that gives you a little bit more information and a little bit more adventure seed ideas. There's actually quite a bit here. You could conceivably run, you could run this as presented in 1 4-hour game session, I think. Or you could stretch things out. There's certain, if you wanted to add a lot of detail to it, you could actually stretch this out to 2 or 3 sessions if you really wanted to and your players were having fun. I don't think there's any need to rush this. Anyway, that is Fabula Ultima. I thought it was pretty neat. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to seeing the final product when it is released. I may do a solo play or a journal reading of a solo play a little bit later, and we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much for stopping by. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for listening to my ramble, and peace be with you.